Sayo uluma se maunga o te lei mua iwa aia halai ona o wala au leni e ui wana o se taimi Yesu tali alap te talo fa mole mole mo o mana Nisi taimi te a e ai maunga O nisi taimi e so le vasa O nisi taimi e te ui le toafa Ia ola lo uanganga E malo si lo alofa Bea o mai leleanga O nisi taimi te a e ai maunga Ia ola lo uanganga Tamo mau ma oe Sa o manatu e whai mo fie Ua o se se I o wala A o te tau tino nei A o to atuli O a ule nei Yesu e tali
Alea faina ile la to lo tam faye senyo la to au lungo ta to lisi but the tau fi le la material ta to public forum ole tai mo ta to waso pe ona material le aso na le la sa mata me le tua sa silvi inga man fa tai ta to tapa au le langi ona wa sopo ia so ifua a wina le fai val tapu te al ta o sola e leo tato tau nu mai le fiafi te tasi lava le tato polasanga po tato fontanga mo nei fiafi e vi e pela lofa maleanga leo tato tamai le langi ona lo tau singa e mai se o na lofa o fai ona aulia mai ele nei fiafi malono sai malo foi lava papale I know it's been a long day for everyone in this room. It's the same people, I think, that's been here. Some days have been longer for some of us than others, like those that traveled in last night, especially those that flew straight from DC. But we do appreciate everybody making the time and staying behind to contribute to this public forum. So I want to welcome everybody, and I call this public forum to order. The facilitators for this meeting is still going to be Anu, and co-chairs Atotasi and I will be circulating through the different groups to ensure that the discussion is flowing, and if there's any questions that you need from us or from Anu, please feel free to let us know and raise your hand. We'll be available to all the breakout groups in case there are any questions as far as this process is concerned, or questions that need to be clarified with respect to the 5 areas of discussion. Those being commercial fishing and onshore processing at the cannery. We've got several experts that are here for both of those, as well as economic impacts and opportunities. I see a lot of smart people with respect to economics, much smarter than me, that's for sure. We have education and outreach people that are here, conservation, science, and resource protection. And lastly, but not less important, is the cultural and maritime heritage. So if you haven't signed up, we encourage you to do so, and please feel free to participate in the discussions. So at this time, I'll turn the floor over to the National Marine Sanctuary of American Samoa Superintendent, Tuatasi. Thank you.
Ai o ke lei mangosia le whapupoia li ia wale ma whaanga ngei aso ma le kako whakisinga. Makulele umanga e sula le lofo le kua ma pailu l'fungua pe nga kako iei ngei kula o le fifi. O sa mofu le kungu umang kofi. Mga kwele koe amo pue enga sa ufa makalanga pa ia mai le amakanga si o lava nga kaanga. A le nganga whawhai le kua ia le ua kako o mai ngei kula lo molunga pe le lofa malanga le kua. Again, welcome to this part of our agenda, the public forum. I'd like to just make a few remarks before I turn over to our facilitator. I'm so pleased to see such a diverse and engaged group. I would like to acknowledge once again our co-host, the American Samoa government, for their willingness to be partners in this process. I would also like to acknowledge other partners who are here to provide information and expertise and to listen so that we can all work together from a common, valid, and correct starting point. In true democratic fashion and in the island way, NOAA is committed to working collaboratively with our partners and communities to collectively shape our future together. We are here tonight to work together to better understand our Pacific remote islands and to understand how they fit into our lives now and in the future. We are also here to understand how and if a sanctuary designation could fit into our vision for a sustainable future. NOAA is working on a proposal for a potential National Marine Sanctuary for the Pacific Remote Islands. It is important to note that NOAA is still in the information collection phase and has not made any decision about what a future sanctuary might look like, or even if a sanctuary designation is right for the collective community that uses and cares about the Pacific. And that is why we are here, to listen to you, to understand what your worries, knowledge, vision, expertise, and ideas are, so that we all work together to shape a sanctuary proposal that meets our collective goals and objective in the best way. I encourage all of you to have an open mind tonight, but also to think outside of the box. Think big. Our ocean has a wealth of resources in it. Everything from fisheries to cultural heritage, to unique biodiversity, to economic opportunities, to educational opportunities. And I challenge you to think about how all of those pieces fit into our vision for the future. And I would like to invite our facilitator. She will introduce the topic and highlight some of the key elements and attributes and the expectations and the composition. We also felt that we have set aside the arrangement to allow more open mind conversation and freely able to engage. So Anu will go over the layout and time frame and more instruction. So I welcome Anu Hudu to the podium.
Thank you and good evening. And my name is Anu Gupta. For those of you who are just joining us this evening, thank you so much for coming. I have the privilege of having been invited here to help facilitate this meeting, the workshop during the daytime, as well as this public forum in the evening. And it's my hope and job to help bring clarity and understanding and to work together to find solutions that work for everybody. So to start off, I wanted to go over what we did during the day. I know many of you weren't able to make it, so I just want to really be transparent about what's happening and where we're going, and then we'll go over what we're doing tonight. So today there was a workshop that was co-hosted by the American Samoan government as well as NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration from the U.S. government, and specifically the Office of National Marine Sanctuaries. And they were here to discuss this proposal that's out there to possibly designate a national marine sanctuary in the Pacific remote islands. And we were really working together to understand what that means, what it means now, what it could mean in the future, and we're halfway through. So today, we started first with a really inspirational opening with many of your elected leaders here showing that they're really committed to this idea of partnership. And that continued throughout the day. So the reason that there's a workshop, the reason that people are gathering is because deciding how and if a sanctuary is right, what it could possibly look like, needs many, many different voices, many different perspectives, and it needs that partnership. So leadership was very clear in saying, we're here, we're working together, we're committed to this partnership, and then they essentially tasked us to get to work. Then we went into, and then we introduced some of the people who are here. Just want to acknowledge that we have many people from the U.S. federal government who are here to listen and learn. We have people from the Office of National Marine Sanctuaries. We have people from fisheries. We have people from the White House. And they're all here to really learn and share with you information. They want to learn from you what your ideas are, what your concerns are, and then also share with you information about this potential sanctuary and all of the possibilities that go with it. And then we got into the baseline understanding of what the sanctuary process is. So we broke it into pieces. In a few minutes, I'll invite someone from the National Marine Sanctuaries to come up and talk about that process. But we all came to a common understanding, hopefully, of what a sanctuary process is, where we are in that sanctuary process. And as Atuatasi said, there have been no decisions made. So we are still, everyone is still in that information collection phase. Then we also looked at, okay, there's a process. At the end of that process, what could the outcomes look like? And that's really why you're here. We need your input, we need your ideas, expertise, in order to shape a possible outcome. After that, after really working to get clarity on what we're doing, why we're doing it, what the outcomes could look like, after that we heard perspectives from the American Samoa government as well as private sector. And they really wanted to share that fishing, fisheries is essential, both directly for food, for cultural identity, but also indirectly in its connections to the economy, and even further indirectly in its connections to the way that people live in their daily lives, how they pay their power bills. That's all connected in some way. And so they shared that information. And I think it's fair to say that everybody here really heard that and has been tasked with using that information as they shape the potential sanctuary. Then at the end of the day, we got into very briefly just a description of what's happening out there in the ocean. At the back of the room, there's some maps of this area that we're talking about, the proposed National Marine Sanctuary. And we got a flavor, a very short flavor of what's out there. High biodiversity, cultural areas, there's existing fishing and what it looks like, there's enforcement. And so we just got a flavor of that. And that brings us to where we are now. So now, we're here to continue listening. Our NOAA partners are here to continue listening, continue sharing information with you, and then together, blending that information that you're sharing, we're all sharing together, into some ideas for a possible sanctuary. I will go over the overview of the breakout sessions, but first, I wanted to invite Brady Phillips from the Office of National Marine Sanctuaries to come up, and he will give you more detail on that whole sanctuary process.
Thank you. Oh, if I stand here, I don't need this. Just a quick show. So again, Brady Phillips. I'm with NOAA's Office of National Marine Sanctuaries, and I'm the project manager for this proposal to designate or to consider and designate a sanctuary in the remote Pacific Islands. And I've been in Hawaii for a few weeks, talking to my colleagues at NOAA Fisheries with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. I'll be chatting with the Western Pacific Fishery Management Council a couple times in the next week. We've been meeting with the Air Force, with the Navy, with the Coast Guard. This is really an information gathering. We're here in American Samoa to listen, to dig into some of the issues that were brought up in our scoping meetings that were held earlier this summer. And first of all, I really want to thank you all for taking the time. I know many of you have attended several meetings on this topic over the last 6 months or so. It's an important issue. Coming here to American Samoa, I really feel like I'm beginning to feel you and understand how important it is, how the land and the waters are part of who you are as Samoans and as part of the Pa'a Samoa. So, thank you for helping me understand that and helping me remember how people are connected really to our oceans and our sense of place, and how we're all trying to live on this planet sustainably and maintain it for our future generations. And I think keeping that in mind as we move forward is an important concept. We're all here for the betterment of the planet so that we can all live here and our next generations can live here. So I'm going to briefly just not go into too much detail, but just a quick show of hands. How many of you did not attend the session today? Okay, so my goal is to really give a quick snapshot right now, just to bring you all up to speed in terms of a process. I work with the federal government. It's all about process and timelines and how things happen. So, can you do the next slide? Does it not work? Oh, there we go. Oh, I think it's below those. Okay. Next one. No? Anyway, I'll start talking and see if you can try and find the slide that has the designation. Yeah, there we go. So where we started, so again, back earlier in the year, President Biden did put out a presidential memo that directed the Secretary of Commerce to consider beginning the process to designate a national marine sanctuary in the Pacific remote islands. The Secretary of Commerce agreed that NOAA should initiate that process, and back in April is the month, April 17th, NOAA published a notice of intent to begin this scoping process. And the sanctuary program has 4 general steps that we use to go through scoping. The first, to designate a national marine sanctuary. The first step is called scoping, and basically what it just means is to scope the issue. So we hold public comment periods. In this case, we held 7 in-person meetings, 2 virtual meetings. We accepted public comments online through regs.gov. People could mail in comments, and as well as in I think that was it, that timeline. And so we amassed a group of comments, through our public comment period, and this helped us define the issue of what issues were out there, what was concern, how can we then take that and move forward and better figure out what issues to address in a draft plan. So as part of the public comment period phase ended on June 2nd. And in the end, we did receive a fair number of comments, 57,000. But I think more importantly, we did hold meetings here in American Samoa, Guam, 3 places in the Commonwealth of Northern Marianas, and Hawaii, and and other comments from around the country. So, but particularly the in-person meetings, and we had, I think, about 370 people attend in person. So again, many of you were probably at that meeting, and they help form the basis of our scoping. Now, even though the public comment phase has ended, we are still in scoping. We are still digging into the issues. It's been stated before, but we'll state it many times. We do not have a final proposal. We are still even considering the alternatives as to whether or not, what alternatives should we consider before we even make a determination on whether to designate a marine sanctuary in this area. So, and as part of this scoping phase, we are also consulting with various federal agencies, as I mentioned, Fish and Wildlife Service, the Navy, the Air Force, the Coast Guard, our colleagues in NOAA Fisheries. We have multiple meetings a week. We're consulting with the Western Pacific Fishery Regional Management Council. I don't think I got that right, but WestPAC, for those of you who know it like that. And workshops like this where we're digging into, we received a huge range of issues during our public scoping, from we love it exactly the way it is, do the most conservation you could do, to we don't like it, get rid of it, you shouldn't have gone in there in the first place. And everything in the middle, from boundaries to regulations to what we could do with cultural and historic resources, how we could connect to other marine protected areas or monuments in the Pacific. So we're kind of in the process of amassing all that information, figuring out what to do with it, how does it lead into the documents, what we call in that stage the sanctuary proposal. And by the sanctuary proposal, or the draft designation documents, there's 3 things that we'll be working towards in the next till spring, and that's producing a draft management plan, which basically lays out the different activities, the goals, things like education, research, conservation, and the different activities that you plan to do under those. So that's the draft management plan. We are also required to develop a proposed rule, so a draft regulations to implement the sanctuary. And then under the National Environmental Policy Act, we are required to develop a draft environmental impact statement. So this draft environmental impact statement will look at the various alternatives that we are here to help figure out, like which alternatives, from doing nothing, or what we call status quo, it's relying on, pretend like the sanctuary never existed, that's called status quo, to what would a fully protected, comprehensive sanctuary look like. And in the middle, is there a few other alternatives that we should consider? And I'll say, we are required to do, as part of our environmental impact statement, to fully analyze each of the alternatives, not only for their environmental impacts, so by conducting, but through our proposal, what are the benefits to the environment, or are there any negatives? Likewise, for socioeconomics, in our proposal, what are the potential impacts, pro or con, of our various alternatives? And then eventually the agency will select a preferred alternative, and that will be the basis of what we move forward on. And it goes through a long period of kind of interagency review, a lot of just, there's a lot of layers within a federal bureaucracy and through the federal government as to approve before we send it to the public. But by next spring, so spring of 2024, so that's 6 months away at least, we do anticipate releasing these draft documents. Again, the draft management plan, the draft proposed rule, and the draft environmental impact statement that lays out these various alternatives, that analyzes the environmental and socioeconomic impacts. It identifies our preferred alternative, And then we send that out. We have to wait 30 days to give the public an opportunity to fully review this. And then we will come back to the communities here in American Samoa, Hawaii, Commonwealth of the Northern Marianas Islands, and Guam, and hold, I think we've seen the benefits of holding in-person workshops to really help explain our proposal. So we'd like to hold additional public workshops, and then we're required to hold public meet, to get public comment. So that's more like a formal public meeting. So after that, we assemble all the comments again, and we respond to comments. So we lump them together. We are required to respond, at that point to the public comments. And we then consider what changes should we make to the draft document. And then ultimately, a determination is made. Should we move forward with the designation or not? And that's that final decision. And, our crystal ball, we're trying to do it by the end of 2024. So that's kind of where we are. I will say that additional opportunities for public comment, things like this workshop here is feeding into our scoping process. But then I think one of the meatier times for the public to really provide comment is once we've done the analysis, once we've worked through all of our public comments, our consultations, and put together alternatives, identified that preferred alternative, that's our real proposal. That's what we are then asking for you to comment on in the spring of 2024. And again, that's the first time that you really see our proposal like full on. So I think in a nutshell, that was what I wanted to talk about. And again, I'm around for the next couple days. Feel free to ask me further questions.
Thank you, Brady. So Brady summarized in 10 minutes what it took us about 2 hours to go through this morning. But just to reiterate a few of those important points. NOAA and its federal partners are working on a proposal for a possible sanctuary. They don't have a proposal out. You may have seen other people's ideas. That's not the official NOAA proposal. Where they are right now is in the information collection and analysis phase. That's why you're here, to help with that. They take all of that information back. They draft up draft documents that say, these are all of the possibilities for a potential sanctuary. They put that out in a draft document. They send it back out for your review and comments. And then more than a year later, they say, this is our possible then they send it for decision, basically. So just really clarifying that no decision has been made. They're in the information collection phase, and that's really why you're here. All right. So also today we had the opportunity to hear local perspectives. Ta'atase, can I invite you up to share some of those?
Thank you, Anu. I'll try to be as brief as possible. I think the majority of the people here were here during the session this morning and into the afternoon, but for the benefit of those that weren't here today, we started off this morning with a very passionate plea that came from the governor. Governor Limanu addressed this body, especially our federal partners, with respect to the priorities for American Samoa and how that relates to sustaining the economy that's directly related to the tuna industry. And he referenced a proverb from the Samoan language that to be cautious of saving the net instead of attacking or going for the fish. Make sure that the net is preserved for another day. And he referenced that in respect to this sanctuary proposal and making sure that the net is always going to be there to sustain the families and the local communities. And then we transitioned into several very powerful presentations by different stakeholders. The first one was from the Secretary of Samoan Affairs, Maunga Tasiasuenga, gave a cultural perspective with respect to the importance of providing food for your family, food for the villages, food for your traditional obligations, and how that relates to the ocean. The culture and the traditions of the Samoan people go back millennia, and it's always directly tied to the ocean and the environment. The other presentations that we heard this morning was from the Chamber of Commerce. Louis Woman presented on behalf of the Chamber and provided a different perspective. It was a statement from the Chamber, provided a perspective from impacts to small businesses and the general private sector economy of American Samoa. Quite interestingly, at the end of his presentation was a slide that showed the decline in the birth rates from 1998 to 1998 to 2022. And there was a sharp decline in the birth rates, and he attributed that directly in relation to the decline in the tuna industry. We had 2 canneries, about 20 years ago. The other cannery went away, and then the decline in the tuna industry, and he correlated that to the birth rates. Quite interesting, and it was an eye-opener for a lot of people. And then we heard from the fuel suppliers, Director Lisa Tuato'o from the Office of Disaster Assistance and Petroleum Management. She is the Chief Petroleum Officer, I got that right. And Taulapapa Will Sword provided a perspective in regards to marine diesel and how that translates into the general economy and movement of transportation within the region and for the territory. In 1998, the volume of marine diesel was around 30 million gallons, and as of last year, it had been reduced down to 6 million gallons. So it's quite alarming statistics. I think that's data that wasn't previously shared before with our NOAA folks that are here today. And then we heard from one of the last presentations from the morning session was from ASPA. Ryan Toto'o gave a presentation of utility rates and how that's related to the cannery and the tuna industry. When you talk about tuna, you don't really talk about utility, but he gave a totally different aspect and perspective on how the volume of electricity and utility that Starkist generates impacts the small consumer. The ratepayers, the general residential customers of ASPA is directly impacted if the volume goes away from Starkist. And he drew back a couple years to when there were 2 canneries, and when 1 cannery went away, that rate increased. The volume of electricity usage by the cannery dropped by about 30%. And that impacted the general residential customers. Their rate increased significantly because of that lost volume. And the concern there is not only because of the cost of utilities, but also if jobs were lost, people won't be able to afford paying for their utility bills. So very different perspectives this morning, and I think it was a very great discussion, but the feedback and the engagement from the participants in that session drew a lot of emotions, not only from the locals, but I saw a lot of teary-eyed folks here that are visiting from Off Island, and it showed that the impassioned plea of the different presenters, as well as the dialogue that came from everybody in the audience, really touched their hearts, as well as the emotions of the local people, and how this conversation and the importance of commercial fishing to allow for our tuna industry and the cannery and the economy to be sustained. So that's just a brief snapshot for those of you that weren't here this morning. But I do want to say that there will be more opportunities tomorrow for presentations from the local government as well as industry folks that will be here tomorrow. So if you're interested in that, please come out, and I think there'll be opportunities to engage with Anu and the presenters in Q&A session tomorrow. So thank you, Anu.
All right, so that brings us to tonight and why we're here tonight. Tonight is really set up to encourage more listening and more exchange between our visiting federal partners, between American Samoa government, private sector, community members. We really want to make sure that we're hearing and listening and sharing information. So the way that we have this structured is that we're going to have breakout groups. And we've asked you to sign up over there. If you haven't, please go over there and do that. Well, we have 5 breakout groups covering different topics that are relevant to this sanctuary. As Tuatasi said in his opening, he wants you to be open-minded and he wants you to think really big. A lot of what's been said about this possible sanctuary has been fishery related, but there are many other things that are part of that story. And so tonight is set up to get at those different aspects of the story. So our 5 breakout groups cover these 5 different topics, all of which are relevant to a potential sanctuary and relevant to our daily lives. One is, of course, a breakout group on commercial fishing. We want to hear from you and share information back and forth about commercial fishing and the direct links to the cannery. Another breakout group is focused on wider economic impacts and opportunities, and that one is really thinking big. How can American Samoa and U.S. government and all of the partners involved work towards economic opportunities? And where could a sanctuary fit in that? Another one of our breakout groups looks at education. Sanctuaries, one of the benefits of sanctuaries, if it were to go in, is that it can support education and outreach and really get people to these remote places. So there's a group that's there to talk about and share information and priorities and ideas about that. We heard from one of our last presenters of the day that those islands and those areas out there in green on those maps have really unique biodiversity. They have special species. They have unique scientific background. They're important for climate change. And so we have a whole group that's looking at that, the conservation aspects and the science and research aspects. And then we also heard that there is really significant cultural history in those areas, on land, underwater, in the whole area. They're connected to daily lives. So those are those 5 breakout groups. Each of the breakout groups has a facilitator. It has a series of questions. I think you would have picked those up as you came in. But we really just want to talk to each other, share your ideas, share your information, your perspectives, and your priorities, and ask questions. Our partners are here to answer a lot of those questions, and then we'll give you a solid block of time to do that. It's not like a public hearing when you have 3 minutes. This is where there's real time to ask questions and get feedback from your partners. Then we'll reconvene, and we'll ask each of those 5 groups to share with the rest of the group what you did. So as you are having that discussion, please select someone who's going to stand up and share with the rest of the group what kinds of things you talked about. And then we'll wrap up towards the end of the evening so that we can all really make sense of what you've said and how it fits into a possible sanctuary designation and what that sanctuary could look like. So with that, we're going to break into our groups. And I will let you know where they're going to be. So commercial fishing, if you've signed up for commercial fishing or canneries, you'll be meeting in those chairs right in the back where much of our audience is sitting. So I will have to ask you to move around if you haven't. That'll be a group in the back there. And you'll just move your chairs around so you can create a circle and just chat with each other. If you signed up for the socioeconomic group, which is the wider economic opportunities, ideas, you will be up here on the stage. All right, so we'll ask you to come on up. There's some chairs, set them in such a way that you can really talk to each other. If you signed up for the education group, education outreach, you will actually be outside. So if you go outside those doors, the left door is a small little conference room, and that's where you can have discussions about education and outreach. If you signed up for conservation or for science or research, you will be upstairs in that area up there. That area is limited to 15 people for safety reasons. So if you need to move, then we'll move you. And if you signed up for the cultural heritage panel, then you will be up here, and we'll reconfigure these tables if we need to, or just pull up the chairs around them so that you can have that conversation. So again, commercial fishing, the chairs in the back, socioeconomic and economic opportunities up here on the stage, education outside, conservation and research up the back stairs, and cultural heritage right up here. So I'll give everybody a few minutes to get started, get situated, and then your individual facilitators will get you started. Thank you. Lauren. Who's Lauren?
I have always loved you. I hope to for a lifetime. The promise made by this heart of mine. Hold the line. You know one day I will come for you.
You don't know what it's like for all your hopes to rise, to see them fall again with the setting sun. My heart, you're the one. I know one day you will come for me. I will comfort you, we'll grow old forever, together in love, to settle in the calm, following love's found. It's just you and I, never let you down. I will never let you down. It's just you and I for a lifetime.
I will always love you, and not just for this lifetime. The promise made by this heart of mine.
You're the one. I knew one day you would come for me. I will comfort you, we'll grow old forever, together in love, to settle in the calm, following love's found. It's just you and I, never let you down. I will never let you down. just you and I, for all time. Hengada toe, ito pulato. Hengada toe, ito pulato. It's just you and I.
Nalai na timu ia ileala Wa ea oleva amole olo umanava E malulu tafia mafana fana Sa ilinga manui la ufainga malanga Taunu uatule malaiva alele E fawileva aine ifale tetele Wale mautunulo ufatuanga tete Wana oa unei ua saulo ufefe Taulo umafau fau ile Samaria hangalele Ole alo faiso o se tasi e peyo lana tau singai si anate Ia faha oe e te tali lele Nia faha oe e te talia une Si mama o si o ainga Tafia va veo o atumo se tau saminga O fa ata fai leve vela o lela Wamu o upa i leve vela o leta Uana oa une ile tonga va hotele Wataulo umafau fau ile Samaria hangalele Ole alo faiso o se tasi e peyo lana tau singai si ona a whao e te tali lelei. Ni a whao e te tali a unei. Na o supo I le moa na sau sau. Sei amo le tau singa o le whanau. Nanga lola o whangu vai I le lau lau. O le mau tonu lo ma whau whau. Se va a whangota ua o langona hina. Na o wala au ilo o matelai. Wa o le mahapeta u e mativa. E alola u foe ai mana tuaina. Samaria Galilei O lea lo fai so o se tasi e pei alanga tau singa I si ana te Ni a whao e te tali lelei Ni a whao e te tali a Taulo uma fau fau ile Samaria Galilei.
You once walked the earth with the uncertainties of life, but you continue to persevere, leaving an imprint on every soul that came into your sight.
Ole tamaita Samoa. Ole toa, ole ainga. Pacific woman whose courage has no boundaries, nor is it confined. She fearless, fierce, compassionate, wise. Her love is unconditional, loving, kind.
The strength of a Pacific woman is as strong as the basalt rocks sculptured around the shorelines of the sea. Standing the test of time, she lives on, far beyond this life.
Ole tamaita Samoa.
E tu mau,
E whaavavau.
pese pesenga mayele savili atata mai mawawa le kitara tino amaniti sama le malu peni angelu elongo yo utino umfana mai lo tatu faaola oye su keriso oi se hisi sei so fai mai oi lenga o ita le o fia awai oi se hisi sei so fai mai oi lenga o ita le o fia awai sana manganu ing mafai Oteng fa'au lele yo leto langa manay ay leva ai Emo maila o kirisi masi malanu ese O mea lo fa wafe pasi ya I uafana maile Pepe se osana, Pepe se aleluia. Ufana mai le tama, luta tu puluvanga, vigia ele mesia. Pepe se aleluia. Luta tu puluvanga, ufana mai le tama, luta tu puluvanga, vigia ele mesia. Fatava le fale o manu na fano ai le tupu le fina ngalo olo na tama ia fa atanu lona lo fawana au na mai ai lona lo pele ia oli le lo langi uma toto fai pepe se le te tele Pepe se aleluia. Ufana mai le tama, luta tu puluvanga, vigia ele mesia. Pepe se aleluia. Ufana le mesia. Ufana mai le tama, luta tu puluvanga, vigia ele mesia. Oi se hisi, sei so fai mai. Oito fia vivi. Oi lema o ita, leo fia awai. Oi se hisi, sei so fai mai. Oi lema o ita, leo fia awai. To know what you feel in my own love, ili way be upu le muangana. Se ilunga ete mo ilo fala, be malulu te mo e mafana fana. Be ofea ole nei la lulani. Te au mawai, te mana tualo, te nuumoni. Se ilunga e te toe fo i mai. Be wenga ua marea ua se tonge langa tila fa apulo ile tualima lingongo ole tua sivi ua lele mawanunga ilunga ia lea tua fa asa oloto tabua lo utofi o esa uia la upele siva fa ata upati leo tele so ia o sevi inga lea unga ia lea tua fa iva venga lo tautinga ona ilenga luenga la utautua fa afetaita usifea gainga malole ko malole kau Tauteia fa malole bale Falute ua solo ya fenoa lo fina malo mo onga ole loto ya faita ua maona so fetua ole alofa ua susulu malama lama Yesu ole ola famanino Ise falute ua solo Ya fenoa lo fina ngalo Onga ole loto Ya faita ua maona so Kesua ole alofa Ua susulu malama lama Oe ole toa e te taungo lompalo o te tapua I he ala I le te talo I la o aloli ia manu ia o whaiva e lua au pelu o lau fatu ma le atua na tau tāhuta au ana whaau unai le tama na alanga yo sua hue ina ia tumau o le la lana whinanga lo ia whaiha o manu ia na o le taua a no ho oe o se au au na le aunga a e malo ho oe o se au au na le aunga o oe o le Ya emana tuaina Loi mata o matua Le tapua ina Le tumu atoa Ia e luta toa O mama manau Usifeleina Ia lele mali e lautia Whaamanu ia mai le tua ilo o langa Ni tua whawhine lalele o a utau sala Whai mai e pala le maa ai le pala o le tala Ulua o ui o inata Le mawhai o na whaangaluhina So o se mea o te iai o te mana tuolua fōlinga Ponga yo le o te le o lo matua Ma le atau le toea ina O olua o a upele wa upenina O olua o ui oi mata Te tonu I se whanau matama O le auro e I ila e se mai le pala pala Se mea lo fasili Mo se tuanga ne whaatawa O te mana tua a olu pepe mea I whaamu mua lava olu e so o se mea I mali e luinga I awhai e lua te vinga Ina I tu atu oni sei I lua talinga Ova ai atu ulu tupu malosi Lua I loa lele o uti ute maho utafi Ute leo o lua Tausi wha maoni Whaala e au atu I a lua wha malosi O lua o ui oi mata Te tonu I se whanau matama O le auro e I ila e se mai le pala pala Se mea lo fasili Mo se tuanga ne whaatawa Tia ina lea poa I atina Walua I loa ina O upu tonu mai le tusi sa E alu ai sa uaso I alu manatua Le tua I a sole le maso whaingata I alu manatua E whaamao ni le E puna peha leha lufa mo o lua O lua o ui oi mata E o ngata tonu I se whanau matama O le auro e I ila e se mai le pala pala Se mea lo fasili Mo se tuanga ne whaatawa Feel a little lower if you in my own love. Illy be upu limuangana. Se ilunga ete mo ilofala. Be malulu te mo e mafana fana. Be ofea only neila lulangi te au mawai te mana tualo tu nuumoni. Se ilunga ete toi fo imai ile lau ile na fo imai ele tu e fai mo tofi. Hawe Samoa o se pao pao pe a ilunga o pe au wanga ulo na la ma ua ta fea ilea au umutu o le taula ma ua ta fea fo I foe pe o le ngoto o le maa le lea I o se tai mai o elo leo leo mamoe le tua o Israel Jehovah tai mai le tua Papa oe, olo, olo. Talo talo no uso o ela muna mai Le musu musu atu e osio so vai vai A o ta fitu fa I le fainga ta o lau sa valinga O pule pese Wai e se tau tai E lea o Tama fainga O leu somoni e whangatonu le malama E whaatholinga o ni upu e whaatinga I au talinga Ai uno o sa afi afi mai tua uno uano wha Ai uno o sa afi afi mai tua uno uano wha whaangalo mafutanga whaapene Ula utatalo Ia tau ane ai so se O leo romo Ni a tau lungu lungu e alele Tata fata ule tai au e whainga tā Ule e tau o so ua whai tau I tula Ole ata whaamawa he Ole ata whaatofa Ia tawhi mala Ole whainga malanga Wha o manu ia tinilo wha moe moe Ia manu ia lau wha muli lo usoe O tutu oe i tala sanga ia leo leo a o e moe A e sao mane ama wha ailo mailo foe A e sao mane ama wha ailo mailo foe Lua o walu i tunei E le whaangalo mafutanga whaapene Ola utatalo Ia tau ne ai so se O leo romo Ni a tau lomo lomo I lea lele E musu musu mani e mai lo fatu E malo si mai nai o manatu O lo ule alofa lo ule fai atu Aua o oe o seu samoni ia te au Lua o walu i utulei E le whaangalo mafutanga whaapene Ola utatalo Ia tau ne ai so se O leo rono Ni a tau lungu lungu I lea lele Lua o walu
Breakout group report back, share what you've been talking about with the rest of the group. So if you could please wrap up your last few comments and then gather back in this area so we can all share what we've been talking about. Thank you. Okay, let's all reconvene back up here. We're going to want to hear from each of the 5 groups. And we all want to get out of here before it's too late at night, so please come on back. Make sure you have somebody who's going to be able to present on behalf of your group. Hello. Maybe I'll have your group go first, since you're maybe I'll have your group go first, and then we can push this out of the way, or? Uncle's gonna do it for us. Okay. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. We want to get a report back from each small group. And since the cultural heritage group was sitting right up here, they are ready to go first. Okay, so everybody come on up, have a seat. We're going to hear back from the small groups. We're starting with the cultural heritage group. I'll hand it over to Kalani, who will introduce the team.
Hey, aloha everyone. My name is Kalani Kyocho. I work for NOAA's Office of National Marine Sanctuaries as the Cultural Resources Coordinator for the Pacific Islands region. And I'm joined here by Muiafailili.
Yeah, foi ava ilili.
Sufui Ava Ili Ili. Mahalo. So we had, Uncle, I'll read the questions that we had in our group. So the discussion questions that we started with was, what does meaningful community engagement look like for you and your community? What does appropriate cultural recognition look like for the Pacific remote islands? What are your thoughts about a collaborative process for renaming the Pacific remote islands? And what ancestral, historical, and/or cultural knowledge, stories, or other information could help to inform the proposed designation process for a national marine sanctuary in the Pacific remote islands? These are just some starting discussion questions, but we really were inspired by the collective sharing in our group, and we're going to share some of the main thoughts and ideas that were shared today.
Thank you, Kalani. The first question again, Kalani, was what?
What does meaningful community engagement look like to you and your community?
Yes, thank you. As they say in Samoa, thank you for the question. Yes, what is a meaningful engagement? Yeah, we, the rest of our group, especially the Samoans, believe that the most appropriate cultural meaningful engagement is going to the villages and engage the village councils, the high chiefs, talking chiefs, then the Aumanga, the Tinifu, and the rest of the villages, taking this issue to all the villages. But we also believe that that perhaps that's impossible to do because of the time constraints. But we believe that what occurred this morning was somewhat close to an appropriate cultural engagement. The father of the territory, the governor of American Samoa, was here. The lieutenant governor was here as well. And the senators and representatives from the Fono, the legislature, were well represented, and as well as many other parts of our village. So what occurred this morning and most of the day was we believe close to that perfect thing. But you know, someone said in our group, well, that's close enough for government business. Yeah. So yeah, and our second question, Kalani?
What does appropriate cultural recognition look like for the Pacific Remote Islands?
Yeah, as I said earlier, in that this general area to us was part of the Manua Tele, the Tui Manua Empire of earlier times, from Samoa, which includes what is now independent Samoa and American Samoa, which includes Manua, part of that greater Tui Manua Empire. So that should be acknowledged. If we are to really want to acknowledge the history, that should not be forgotten. We also acknowledge the Micronesian voyagers who were pretty active during that time in the past, voyaging these parts of the Pacific. That should not be undermined. And we also recognize later on during World War II, there's some history there where Hawaiian soldiers were stationed there. And so our group believes that to cover the historical timeline and not only Samoans, not only Polynesian, but Micronesians as well, that will be a more holistic way to acknowledge all those who were present and live from the earlier times to this day. Is that the third question?
Yes. What are your thoughts about a collaborative process for renaming the Pacific Remote Islands?
Yeah, I think what I just said would cover that question as well. I mean, it should be you know, it goes back to that first question, what is a proper engagement? And this idea of bringing that question to American Samoa so that we can express our opinions, it's a good thing. Yeah.
And the final question was, what ancestral, historical, and cultural knowledge, stories, or other information could help to inform the process to designate a potential national marine sanctuary in the Pacific Remote Islands?
Yep, I think we have a lot of stories, and that is something that we'll do as a group, and not only our small group, but the rest of everybody, to look up our stories and then share with. I just got an email from Ms. Chow that if I wouldn't mind share information with them, and I just said, yeah, sure, we'll gather our stories and share. Is that it?
That's it.
Yeah.
Paafete tele lava. Mahalo nui.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you
you.
so much.
All right, great. Thank you so much. We have the Science and Conservation Group up next. Do you need more than one mic?
Thank you. And I forgot to pick on somebody, so I'm going to report out for everybody. So we had a small but mighty group upstairs talking about conservation science and resource protection, two things that are really important to sanctuaries. The group started off with a question about what resources should NOAA focus on protecting, and we had a lot of lively discussion about this, trying to understand what's already protected by the monument, what are the gaps, and basically we settled on a consensus that this is part of what needs to be analyzed and that we should be really focused on complementary protection, so filling in the gaps. To keep the resources in the PRI healthy for now and for future generations. So we have some additional notes on that, but that's the kind of how it's summarized down. Our second question was, how could NOAA work with government and communities to protect fragile or threatened cultural and natural resources? And one of the things that came up was to really make sure that as this process moves forward, to provide engagement in decision making with the jurisdictions. So making sure that, because this is kind of a distant thing, a distant place where lots of people maybe have ties to, that we are working with a broad set of stakeholders in decision making about the area. There was also discussion about customary practices under this, and holding space to engage in those types of practices within this, and that should be considered in some of the resource protection discussions as well. Our next question was, what sorts of data are available or should be collected to inform assessment and management actions? And our discussion got a little more lively at this point because there are a lot of gaps still out there in these areas. And in particular, in the areas that are outside of existing monuments, there's a lot of data gaps with migratory species, particularly things like cetaceans, so marine mammals, whales, dolphins, also seabirds, and some of the other areas out there. There is a real need to map these areas and better understand where are seamounts, these hot spots of biodiversity and productivity. So how do we do more mapping out there, understanding what's there? And that led to discussion about more deep sea research. So getting more of the ROVs out there, understanding what's on the bottom, what are on these seamounts, what's the diversity, and how might all of that work together. And so that was the summary for that. And then our next question was, how can NOAA learn from and incorporate local and traditional knowledge into resource protection and management efforts? And one of the things that was brought up with this group is that, this might need to expand beyond the US jurisdictions, that we're not the only ones that are tied into this. And also these are low islands, and a lot of the Marianas here were more high islands, and so there might be a need to tap into other jurisdictions, other countries. I think we mentioned the Marshall Islands, Kiribati, and others in Micronesia that might have used these or similar types of areas. We also talked about, though, incorporating local knowledge in talking with the people that are going there. So talking with the commercial fishers that are up there and using those areas, getting their observations. It might not be quote unquote scientific, but that anecdotal information can be incredibly valuable. And that led us into some of our next discussion, which talked about what type of capacity building or community engagement opportunities should we consider. And we said, hey, what about cooperative research? What about, and this was actually an idea that was brought up by some of the fishing community in June during the council meeting, is, hey, if we're there, like maybe we should be talking about how we can collect data on fishing vessels as were up there in these areas that can help improve the management. So that's something to consider. Cooperative research with vessels that are transiting through these areas or actively fishing. They also talked about the need to bring territorial scientists out and maybe students aboard on our research vessels to make sure that they are getting access to these, that we're using their knowledge and also growing their knowledge and engaging them. We talked about the importance of telepresence as we're doing some of these mapping and deep sea science or even some of the other science, about getting information into visitor centers, more hands-on information. And one of the more, we were just getting into this, is with the availability of autonomous data, bringing that data back to places in the jurisdictions like American Samoa, like Hawaii, like the Marianas, and getting students to actually work through some of this data that could get generated by autonomous sampling. So we could get these data streams about these remote areas and actually grow the capacity for people to do the science in the jurisdictions and help us learn more about it. So that was the recommendation. So some really good discussion. There's more in our detailed notes, but I'll wrap it up there. Thanks.
All right, thank you. And if I could ask the education group, Lindsay, to come on up.
Hi, everyone. So we talked about a lot of different topics during our group session, and a lot of it was really enlightening, but I'm just going to do a quick summary of everything we went over. Our team focused on education and outreach, specifically in terms of building capacity and having meaningful dialogues and engagement with our federal friends and our developing partners. But I think it's fair to say that there's a real concern among specific people that with all the renewed interest in our region, engagement from developing partners might be geopolitically motivated. And so we wanted to do everything in our power to prepare and develop our youth into strong diplomats that can have these meaningful engagements that are not only culturally relevant, but respectful of our traditional knowledge and community leaders and elders. Our group also talked about the importance of creating and investing in programs and curriculum that can be easily implemented into the classroom that are heavily hands-on. Many of our students here in American Samoa are visual and hands-on learners, so it's not enough to just lecture from the text. But we also wanted to see an increase in programs that highlight and draw on a mixture of indigenous knowledge and new sciences. So we spoke of ways we can incorporate technology into the classroom so that it's not just a detriment and addiction to our youth, but that they're able to use social media or virtual reality to learn and in turn teach others. We also wanted the same for our teachers in terms of increasing professional development programs that they can use to better implement programs within their classroom. And it was important for us that these programs be connected and comprehensive in order to bridge all the subject matter that are most important to American Samoa, but also the Pacific region as a whole. We had group members who shared stories of the akule and how we needed to create more awareness around these traditional practices and really highlight these in the classrooms. And we also spoke about creating a regional diplomat program specifically targeted for our Pacific youth. Obviously, it would be started here in American Samoa and Polynesia, but we would also like to see a diplomat program in Micronesia and Melanesia so that our youth can get together to have a conference to really speak on these hot topic issues that are most important to us: climate change, education, social issues, but really using this program to highlight the importance of various areas, specifically in regards to sciences and ocean management, natural resources. And so this was just a summary of everything that we spoke about. And if I'm missing anything, I'd like to invite any of my other group members to add on.
Great job.
Great, thank you so much. And I'll ask the fisheries group.
Thank you. I also forgot to enlist a spokesperson, so I'm going to speak for our group, and I invite any of them to add or correct as needed. So we had a great discussion, very lively, and I really appreciate the input from everybody in the group. And we really covered a lot of ground. So I'll just hit on some of the big themes that came up. We talked about enforcement being a really important issue and the concern and impact of Chinese fishing in the area, and also issues of equity between U.S. and Chinese fishers. People feeling like Chinese fishermen come into the U.S. EEZ, take the fish, and it's very difficult to have any consequences, whereas the U.S. fishermen are held accountable, held to a very high standard for sustainable fisheries. There were concerns about losses, declines in local fisheries, and also at the broader scale, the shrinkage of the fleet over time, and concerns about the economic impact that has had in American Samoa. There were discussions about how the National Marine Sanctuaries Act interacts with Magnuson-Stevens, which one should be relevant in the area, can they work together? So we talked about the idea that the National Marine Sanctuaries Act is really designed to complement other authorities and work with them, and the role for Magnuson-Stevens in regulating fisheries in sanctuaries. There was, frustration about the process and the need for greater consultation with the government of American Samoa and with the communities here, and just recognizing that is a challenge. And also the need for greater investment overall in American Samoa by the U.S. government. And again, we heard a lot of that today about, the Coast Guard fleet and other investments over time that used to be here that aren't here now, and that need for greater support, particularly given the current geopolitical situation and the strategic importance of American Samoa. So I think I'm going to stop there. That was kind of the main points. But I invite any of my participants to speak up if you'd like to add anything else. All right, thank you.
All right, and our last group, here we go, socioeconomics.
Hi, our group discussed different economic opportunities for diversification of the economy here. And we had quite an informative discussion. I personally learned quite a bit. I'll start with talking about the challenges. Two were quite the topic of discussion. One being reliable inter-island transportation, and then reliable and more opportunities for air transportation. And then in regards to economic opportunities, some of which the American Samoa DOC is already working on. One is being a hub for specialized medical care. There's already investment happening for a medical care center and a medical plaza. We also talked about the port here is the largest natural port in the Pacific Islands, and the opportunity to grow that and use that as a place for economic investment, supporting the distribution and supplying of specifically American-made goods through American Samoa. Another place where investment is already happening, but will take a few years to see the full benefits, is the broadband industry with the innovative and technology campus and supporting the digital economy. And then also the potential for foreign direct investment to occur within the island to support infrastructure needs such as hotels. So those were the areas where we see for economic growth. Let me turn the page. And then some of the needs to be able to accomplish this included professional development opportunities, scholarship opportunities for students, marine schools that can teach about different marine disciplines. I'm going to add this, including natural resource economics. That's what I do. And then technical assistance to help with grants and the management of money and funds that are coming into the territory. Boats to support transportation and including training for those captains. More and better monitoring for some of the seismic activity that's happening here, to be able to monitor that. And then also
helping with the permitting process for things such as building seawalls and stuff like that, the length of time that it takes. So is there a way to reduce the time that it takes to get those permits? So with that, I didn't know if there's anything else that the group wants to add. Okay, I'll turn it back to you. Okay, thank you so much. That brings us almost to the end of our evening. I know for some of you it's been a very long day. But I just want to place into context what the next steps are. First, workshop continues at 8:30 in the morning tomorrow. So everyone who was here today, everyone who was here tonight, your perspectives are wanted and valued, and we invite you back here tomorrow. We have our agenda. We'll be looking at socioeconomics, and we'll be diving into fisheries a little bit more tomorrow. The information, the perspectives, the priorities that were collected tonight are all going to go into this process of understanding what's happening and then shaping some possibilities and alternatives for this potential sanctuary proposal. So as Brady explained earlier, that's a long process. We won't expect documents to be back, but we do expect consultation and feedback and all of that in the next, so many months. With that, I really have nothing more to say. I'm going to turn it over to Atasi to close, and we'll see you back here at 8:30 in the morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Alu. This has been it's been a long day, but I think it's worth it. I hope you can all appreciate that we worked so hard, both federal and American Samoa government, to design and to frame the workshop, but also tonight's event to allow more opportunity for really and meaningful engagement. I personally think we met our goal and our objective, although it was a long day, but really is an opportunity. I'm also really pleased to hear that we were able to think big, not limited to just fisheries. I think there's a lot more going on. I think the component that were the breakout sessions really allowed for that consultation. So we got a lot of information, and that's what we were looking for, to validate the process. And we were, everyone was part of it. Everyone was committed and dedicated to spend as much time to provide your perspective and share your knowledge and experience. So on the behalf of the planning team, on behalf of both NOAA, the federal, and co-sponsor, American Samoa government, Governor Lemanu was very instrumental to have this thing happen. I think without the governor's endorsement, we won't be able to, we will not have be gathered here tonight and have this exchange. But one thing I also like to say before I close and before I invite our co-host, there seems to be still confusion on the fact that if there's that sanctuary destination, meaning that that fishing is restricted, and it is one of the alternative. But the case being, it's the National Marine Sanctuary of American Samoa. Well, we went through the management sanctuary expansion back in 2009. It took us 2 to 3 years. And I'll tell you, when Whangatele was a site that it was open for fishing. It was the local community that was strongly was very vocal and put forward the no-take zone in Whangatele. That is the only reason why fishing is restricted. It was not the federal government. It was the local community. Throughout all the sites, Whangalua Whangatele, Whangalua Whangamaa, excuse me, fishing is allowed. Aunu is multi-purpose. We have one of our research zones, and we allow trolling in that area. But that was also based on consultation and a compromise between the, going through the process between the sanctuary and the recreation fishing. In Ta'u, where the biggest, one of the largest sporadic coral, again, through consultation, we do allow fishing. Swains Islands was not part of the sanctuary, but it was Swains resident that came to the sanctuary and wanted to be part of it. Again, that's the testament of the importance of the input and the recommendation from the community. And I think I'm hoping that will really put any fear to rest. I know we need to allow the process to go through, but the input and the comment, the perspective that we heard throughout this process will really help us to make the best recommendation that will satisfy the concern that we've heard throughout this process. Again, it's clear what the government and the people in the territory wants. They want to support the tuna industry. That's on record. And that's what we're going to take on advisement. So again, no, there's no predetermined, but I think the process will allow all of us to really participate and make sure that your perspective and your recommendation are captured throughout the process. So with that note, again, I would like to thank all of you for your dedication and commitment. We cannot do this by ourselves. It requires a partnership. And as we've seen throughout this process, especially during this workshop and tonight's event, that's the commitment that we got from the governor and the government of American Samoa to make sure now that we work as partners. The success of this process is because of that collaboration and the commitment to make sure that we uncover and turn all the Samoan proverb that owangi ese se finga ngalo ele o falia o le avangoe kalkalngoai ma swala pule ma mai faali finga ngalo inga ia alo ia makaua I fuafuanga o le malo pe nga yei ngia fiafi ai ko mole kele le nga fafkai pa ia masui o le fikulale le nga fafkai nga ua wi uman mangwia ngai yaso ka ko fa moe ia le kalo ia a kalo fileli ia yang le lele ko ia wala la wia. Again, thank you and look forward to tomorrow. I invite Dotasi as a co-host for any final remarks. Thank you.
Toi whailau leo whai ma whangatau molio le whiongal ko vana. Ia mai se ia Rick Samoa. Watulenga ng whaftai lo to whātua tasi ia mai se ia paanga mai malo tele. E lei whai winal tato funtanga we have not concluded our workshop. We've got one more day, but I just want to say, reiterate and reciprocate the comments from Matutasi and say the governor also appreciates this opportunity to collaborate. We've got one more day ahead. It's been a long day today, and I don't want to get in between you and your dinner and your families that are waiting at home. But I agree that there may be still some confusion, like Atutasi said. But it's pretty clear from the presentations and all the discussion today that there is no confusion about what American Samoa wants. I think that's been made clear, and I think that's something, the key message to our federal partners, especially ONMS and NOAA, is that American Samoa is not confused about what it wants. It wants to maintain this industry that supports its economy. And if there are opportunities to expand our economy into other areas aside from tuna, we're willing to discuss that. And hopefully this breakout discussions can generate some of that feedback. But I do want to say and encourage everybody that's here today, there'll be more discussion tomorrow. There'll be more interactions and hopefully more meaningful input. And one of the things that Governor Limanu and Governor Palacios and Governor Guerrero from the other territories had requested is more meaningful engagement. And I think the session today is one of the most meaningful sessions that the local territories have ever had with the federal government in any setting. And I think that's a plus side on the federal, especially Atotasi and the government, the local government, in coordinating this agenda. I know it was a tough ask from the government, but I think John and the team from ONMS, I think we all agree that this setting today was much better than perhaps what it would have been. So commendations on you all on that. I know the final remarks will come tomorrow, but please, I thank everybody for being here today, and please enjoy your dinner, enjoy your families. I know you got some of us still have work to go home and do, but ta'apil fili ilnea fiafi yalofongia le tua falalau pe wala e tato filo I fia le aso atayao. Anything else, Anu, before we close? All right, if you'll bear with me, I'll say a quick prayer just to ask God. As we do, we start with a prayer, we end with a prayer. Tato tutalo. Le tualo matu tumai matu tfalatalata ilo wafio malenganga whawhatai le nei afiafi. Wai ula matu ngā luenga. Whawawina le aso atayao pia na matu a mata mea ia te oe. Papena fwina matu whahi uatu ia te oe. O oe o tautai o I matu umalava. I ala uma ma mea uma matu te whaia. Le isa mea lilo lau silafanga. A matu ta apel nei afiafi matu ta talo. Ta tau malau wafio. Ta ina I mātou la wanganga pa ia tau nui a inga, o lo o tāpua I mai o mātou whaiva. Ia whaafo I lava le inga ia te oe. Whamanuia ia mātou paanga o noa ma lātou uma man malo tele, a meise le whainga malo tutuila manua mai lātou umalawa, wa whaamanoina lo lātou teimile ne yaso. Lofa whamangalo mātou se semo mātou angisala. Na lo lava swafa Yesu, and everybody say, Amen.